bases dropped on a Tuesday morning in Atlanta, Georgia. Soccer Down here is live for July 23rd. It's the Tuesday Thoughts, so we're getting into your thoughts. Tweet at us at Soccer Down here. Let us know what you're thinking about if it's the weekend that was in Major League Soccer, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. If it is the world-renowned, very prestigious Leagues Cup that is kicking off tonight, we'll get into that and what to look for in that tournament. There's also some news and rumors revolving around some MLS teams. One of them that Atlanta just saw over the weekend, Paul Arriola, could be in the crosshairs of a few different clubs who are interested in the U.S. men's national team winger. But we'll also get into your questions and comments on a Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show. Tweet at us at Soccer Down here. We'll get into those as we go this morning. John, let's start with recapping the weekend around MLS. I think we've talked a lot about El Tráfico. I don't really know what else there is to hit out of that one from Friday night. LAFC got the opening goal, and things are looking good, and then they get Zlatan'd, and they kind of fell apart in the second half. I was really disappointed just in their overall level of intensity in the second half. The Galaxy kind of ran them off the field.
And Bob Bradley, in his post-match, addressed their lack of intensity, or however you want to phrase it. And if you're going to be that team that everybody thinks is going to run away with everything and you get punched in the mouth, and this happens, how are you going to continue to respond in these top-level matchups? You know, this is what you're going to be showing the guys for the remainder of the season. You had the opportunity to put your crosstown rival away. I'm not calling it a rivalry yet. It's only played 4 times.
It's a rivalry. Stop. It's a rivalry.
Right. Yes, of course it is.
Why is it not? Why is LA and LAFC not a rivalry?
I'm just looking at the sheer number of times that they've played.
This is a problem, and I'll tell you why I think it's a problem. Because this is the argument that's going to keep coming up about MLS. Well, it's only 25 years old. How can it be anything? It's only 25 years old. Well, how can this game mean anything? They've only played 4 times. Well,
it means something. I just don't call it a rivalry yet. Rivalry to me is something that's Red Sox-Yankees-ish.
But then that's
You're
an impossible standard to hit. We're going to be dead by the time there's rivalries in MLS. Like that's where we're at with that bar. I don't think that's fair at all. Is Atlanta Orlando a rivalry?
I'll get you.
Is Atlanta Orlando a rivalry?
I think Orlando would have to win more.
Is Atlanta Red Bulls a rivalry?
Yeah, I'll grant you that one.
But they've only
same number of time, and I know where you're going with. I know where you're going with the argument. The second I sit there,
is Seattle Portland a rivalry?
Yes.
No, I mean I don't. But they've only.
I know exactly where you're going. When I opened the door, when I said Red Bulls Atlanta United, yes, it's a rivalry.
See, I'm not even banging that one so hard. I'm the one who I don't like, and MLS does it too. The national media does it too. I don't like running from. Well, it can't be a rivalry because I've only played it a few times. It can't be meaningful because of that. Like, then call it. Well, I don't know what the word is. A step down from rivalry. I don't know. I think it's
rivals, but not a rivalry.
It's semantics. It's okay to call it a rivalry. It's okay to put something on it. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I think the pushback on calling this a rivalry, because I mean the flip side is people are trying to say it's one of the best rivalries in the world, which is nuts. Because no, it's not that. Is it one of the best rivalries in the league? Pretty quickly, yeah.
Yeah, one of the best rivalries in Los Angeles.
Yeah. What's better? Lakers-Clippers will be this year because you've got a backstory now. But before, nobody cared.
It ain't the Freeway Series unless you're talking Kings and Ducks, and that's about it.
Nobody cared before. I mean, this game, people care. And when people care and it's a situation like this, I think it's a rivalry. And I think it's silly to fight it because it feels like we keep setting up these definitions that, well, maybe it'll be a rivalry in 10 years. Okay, but then it's still not Yankees-Red Sox. It can't be because they got a head start. Well, MLS can't be the Premier League because it started in 1996, and the Premier League started a few years before, and the first division started way before that. Well, it can't be that. Yes,
I think for me, I'm judging it on even distribution of wins and losses as opposed to one team being dominant over another in a
I can tell
whatever
you this.
case you're talking about.
Georgia-Tennessee was absolutely a rivalry when Tennessee beat Georgia 10 years in a row. I hated Tennessee because of that. It was absolutely a nasty rivalry, and part of it was because of that side of it. Go ask an Orlando fan how they feel about Atlanta. Go ask an LAFC fan how they feel about the Galaxy. I don't think it has to be that either. I think it's about the feeling, and I think it's a situation where you know it when you see it, when you feel it. And this, when you've got one set of supporters coming in camouflage, yes, they did.
Yeah.
You've got the home team putting rubber mats down in their section so they can't stomp their feet and make a bunch of noise.
Oh, but I thought it was to make sure that they could take the garbage out easier.
No. When you've got youth clubs selling tickets to the other team's fans and then said tickets getting pulled, that's a rivalry, man. That's something. And I don't know what else you call it. And I think anything else is just diminishing it for no reason whatsoever.
All right. Like I said, for me, I call them rivals, but not a rivalry. And I guess it's because I'm pinned into the number of times that they've met and the end result of the matches. And that's how I look at it, I guess.
But for me, the thing is, I think when LAFC beats the Galaxy, it will be a gigantic deal to LAFC because it's a rivalry. It's not LAFC beating, Colorado or Portland or Seattle.
I was going to say Connor Casey.
But whoever. It's not LAFC beating San Jose. They don't have that. Galaxy and San Jose do.
Yep.
A rivalry is a rivalry. And I don't think it's fair to do these things about MLS rivalries because basically you're saying that MLS can't have rivalries. And then
I
what's
thought
the
Cali
point?
Classico's a rivalry.
Well, okay, then they can have about 3 rivalries. And then nothing else can meet that standard. And that's no. The El Tráfico, La Clásico, whatever you want to call it. That's a game that I'm watching every year. Because it means something. Atlanta, Orlando, if I'm in neutral, I'm watching that. Because they don't like each other. Atlanta Red Bulls, watching that. Red Bulls NYC, watching it. Portland, Seattle, watching it. Dallas, Houston. Okay.
Yeah. Texas Derby, Lone Star, yeah.
It's good. I think Nashville and Cincinnati. Go tell them they can't have a rivalry yet in year 1. Go tell them. See how that goes. It's okay. We don't have to fight these things. And El Tráfico is a great match for the league. All kinds of drama, all kinds of talk, all kinds of storylines before, during, and after. That's got to be celebrated, not tried to put down, in my opinion, because then it's just basically saying that, well, this game can't mean as much as anything else.
See, I'm looking at it as rivals and not a rivalry. I have to have a body of work, I think.
That's the thing. Why? This is what I want to know is why do you think about it that way? Why? And you're not the only one, by the way. You're definitely not the only one. You're the first one I've heard to argue the LA one as hard as this, but your arguments are similar to what a lot of people say, and I just don't understand why you need to put it down as opposed to just people want to call it a rivalry. It's a rivalry.
See, you're operating under the assumption that I'm putting it down because I'm not calling it a rivalry.
Yeah, I think you are.
What?
Because
I can't say that. I can't.
Go ahead.
I can't say that they're rivals and not a rivalry yet.
Well, that's semantics. If you're saying it's not a rivalry yet, you can't call them rivals because it's not a rivalry yet.
See, I guess the way that I'm looking at the definition is I have a rivalry as a body of work. And for me, it has to be more than 2, 3, or 4. Building toward that, yes, not in dispute with your argument, counselor. I call them rivals, and I guess I have to have a table of results more than just a couple for it to be a rivalry.
No, I get your definition, but the question is, why do you feel like you have to?
I don't know,
put
because
that game down?
because I'm 107 years old and I'm used to seeing things like Yankees Red Sox, and I sit there and see, oh, they played each other for 75 years, and therefore, one side beats the other as much, and I still call it a rivalry, even if one team is beating the other as much as they are.
But that's what I'm saying. When those are the definitions, and a lot of people have them because that's one that gets cited all the time, then we're going to be dead by the time anything in MLS is a rivalry like that, unless you want to throw in the NASL and USL histories of Cascadia and give them that.
And I do.
Okay, that's a stretch, but okay. And if you want to give, I guess maybe then Red Bulls, even though they changed their name, and DC United is a rivalry because they've got 24 years. Like, what I'm saying is, why are we diminishing something that's great in this league by getting worried about the definition compared to other sports of this game? There's no point, in my opinion, because a rivalry game means more. I think it has a bigger feel. I think it gets more people excited, gets more attention. And I think those things are good. I think MLS has grown because of those rivalries in the Northwest. I think it's grown because of the Battle of New York, the Hudson River Derby. I think the LA rivalry is adding to it. Those rivalry matches lift the league. And I think it's a good thing because then you have games that mean a little bit more than a standard Colorado-Orlando match.
Tafka has a...
Don't get it. That's just me, though.
Okay. Tafka has a thought. The difference is rivalry versus storied rivalry. The former is easily obtainable, the second much harder.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, when you start defining, better rivalries and such, that's a different conversation, and that's far more where I'm at. Is rivalries, I think you get rivalries that can be temporary. I mean, just because teams meet in the playoffs year after year or have a bunch of testy, meetings. Atlanta and Red Bulls kind of has that feel. Will it maintain that? I think as long as you have the styles of play, as long as you have the combative natures of the two clubs and the way they meet on the field, yeah. But you could get to a time where you don't have that. I remember growing up that the Falcons and 49ers that was heated. That was a rivalry. They met
Braves,
every year,
Dodgers,
twice
Braves,
a year.
Giants.
Yeah.
West. You
had that stuff because of the divisions. Those went away. Braves, Dodgers is just kind of there now. That happens. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing either when you have a temporary series that means a little more. I think Hawks Celtics. They met in the playoffs a few times in the 80s, and man.
Oh, yeah.
I think Danny Ainge bit Tree Rollins.
That is correct.
All kinds of craziness. But now, I don't know if anybody really looks at that any differently.
Hawks have one.
Yeah, and that's a bad thing. Like, you need them. They're good. So, yeah, I think there are definitely rivalries that mean more than others, and I'll 100% agree with that. And in this league, I think Portland-Seattle is probably the one, but, man, El Tráfico, look at what that game had. You had everything building up to it in terms of tickets. You had all the talk from Zlatan building up to it. You had an early goal from the visitors, then canceled out by a ridiculous goal from Ibrahimovic. Then Zlatan puts them up 3-1. You have the elbow that's been talked about a lot, and we'll get into it a little bit more too. You had the late goal from Vela, and you had the talk after the game. That's great. That's a great thing for the league to have those things. It's not River Boca. And it won't be River Boca until you get a whole bunch of storylines and generations of LAFC families saying, we hate the Galaxy because of Zlatan elbowing Mohamed El Munir 30 years ago. That's where it becomes that storied rivalry. But, yeah, I mean, rivalries can be temporary. They can be short-term, and then they can turn into storied rivalries or turn into whatever the next stage is. But I think it's a disservice, and it happens a lot nationally in terms of, well, it can't be a rivalry. Because basically then, by the definitions that people are given, nothing in MLS can be a rivalry. It just can't. And that's a shame. And I don't know why we need to do it that way. Like, this is, for me, the LA matches are great and are a great addition to the league because you need more of these games that have animosity, have a lot of trash talk, have a lot of fireworks on the field. These are good. These are good things for the league. This is what if you're a random person flipping in on ESPN that night and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. That dude just threw an elbow at the other guy. No, he didn't throw an elbow. Yes, he did. Stuff like that. It's good.
And now let me ask you this. Are we going to continue the conversation about Zlatan and El Trafico later, or are we still on a roll?
Let's go ahead and do it now. We're here right now. So ESPN FC yesterday talked about it. Brian McBride was along the lines with you about he looked over his shoulder. He's getting a peek at where he is, and maybe he's not trying to break bones in his face, but he's trying to get a piece of El Munir. He knows where he is, and he's really nowhere near winning the ball on the header. So McBride said 2 games would be appropriate. Shaka Hislop was on the other side of it. He was like, no, look, this is really bad. This is egregious. And he was saying 4 or 5 games. One, the disciplinary committee can't do that. I don't believe. There is some kind of a caveat with the disciplinary committee, and I don't remember this ever really coming up about, I think they have a larger pool to draw from in terms of suspension if there is an injury involved and that player did not return, and I don't believe El Munir returned because this was very late in the game. Right now, I believe that throwing that part of it out, if that doesn't open up the door for a longer suspension, the most they can give is 2 games. It's they can't give him 1 game, they can't give him 3 games. It's okay, they see this, they think that yes, he should be punished. It has to be 2 games. I'm very intrigued to see how MLS handles this because you're talking about the MLS Player of the Week coming off a hat trick. You're talking about Zlatan Ibrahimovic playing in the Leagues Cup tonight against Xolos. You have an All-Star game coming up. And you also have the Galaxy with a couple of big games. One of them is Portland. One of them is Atlanta. I don't think he gets suspended.
Could they split hairs and say that it's for league games only and give him 2 and still have him be a part of All-Star and Leagues Cup?
No, they could do that. All-Star's not a league game. Leagues Cup's not a league game. It's like if you get a red card in Open Cup. Yeah, so he could participate in those. I mean, I don't think they're even worried about that. I think it's more about, do we want to suspend our big star that we've just talked about all week? And they should. I really think they should. I felt like it should have been a red card on the night, and I'm shocked that VAR didn't get involved. That's the part that I'm most disappointed about the whole situation is that VAR does not get involved with the angles that we saw on the broadcast immediately. I mean, it wasn't a tough one to isolate. You see him look over his shoulder twice. And no, he doesn't rear back and swing the elbow, but he drives it into to El Munir's head.
Oh, yeah.
And no, the height thing I don't think plays into it either. That doesn't matter. You're still responsible for what you're doing with your elbows and your body. And Zlatan, it sure looks like he's trying to make sure that he makes contact with Mohamed El Munir because he's looking for him more than the ball.
Twice.
And then he stood over him, and this is again where it gets back to it for LAFC for me, that you just see their star collide with one of your players, and maybe you don't pick out the elbow from a distance, but then he's standing over him, straddling him, and and talking, and I don't know what he's saying, but at one point he kind of shakes his head like he's angry or saying something back to him. There's no way that should be just glossed over by LAFC players. I'm blown away that they weren't charging in and getting him off of their player. That type of stuff really shocked me in this game. And then afterwards, there was a lot of talk about, look, Zlatan's talking more trash to LAFC staff. Well, they were going at him about the elbow.
Yep.
Like, they weren't just coming out to say, we don't like you. They were coming out to talk about that elbow. And then he cusses him out. I think he's got to get suspended, but I don't think he does. I really don't think MLS suspends him here. I think they swallowed the whistle on this one.
Then, and there are two thoughts going through my brain here. One, how logical is it? Obviously, it can't happen right now. But how logical would it be to have a suspension element where if you cause bodily injury for a player, it's more than 2, or it matches however long that player is out if they're out for a substantial amount of time?
It's a slippery slope, because then you start trying to match things, and you're going to open the door to a reckless tackle that ends up breaking somebody's leg. And should they be out as long as a player's leg is broken? It's never happened before. And then you're judging intent on a reckless tackle. This is different. I think a punch, stuff like that is different. This still, there's enough wiggle room in it that I don't think you can structure it to where it matches the amount of time the player's out, but I do think that the disciplinary committee needs to have more discretion about longer suspensions. But what was Kaku suspended for his situation? 3 games?
Yeah, sounds
when
right.
When he kicked the ball into the stands. And I think, that was red carded on the field, so the disciplinary committee could do different
Then
things.
they just added one, didn't they?
No, they added 2. But if it's red carded on the field, you can do different things. If it's not red carded on the field, the disciplinary committee has limitations. I think that needs to go away, because if referees miss it, the player shouldn't get a bonus, and Zlatan shouldn't get a bonus and preferential treatment because Jair Marufo and the VAR missed this. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's not logical. So hopefully disciplinary committee deals with this, and hopefully this stuff stops, because it's not the first time he's been caught throwing an elbow. He's done it before. He was sent off by VAR in Montreal last year. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is an amazing player, but man, some of this extracurricular stuff is a black eye for the league, and it's a shame, because it distracts you from his quality. It distracts you from that first goal, which is amazing. It distracts you from how good of a player he still is at his age. But the rest of it, you don't have to do that to be a great player, and it's disrespectful, I think, to your opponents in the league and the game as a whole. So we'll see what happens. I'm really curious to see how this gets handled, because the outcry has been pretty strong that there should be a suspension. I don't know if there actually will be. We'll wait and see. And it does affect Atlanta United, because he could be suspended for that match at Mercedes-Benz Stadium coming up August 3rd. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted. We're going to take a break, come back, and get into the rest of the weekend, because there were other matches that happened other than El Tráfico.
Were?
Yes. We'll get into all those right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, July 23rd. Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show. Give us your thoughts on rivalries, on Zlatan's elbows, on whatever else is going on around the league. Tweet at us at Soccer Down here, and we'll get into it as we go this morning. But let's talk about the rest of the weekend's action around MLS. We'll go in chronological order. Columbus 2-1 at home over Montreal. It was David Accam who gave the Crew the lead early in the second half. Bakary Sagna gets a red card for Dogso 10 minutes later, and it's pretty much all she wrote for the Impact.
Break up the Crew.
You might need to.
Eloy Room.
Like for real.
Well, not for real, but
no, for real.
You get a win. Eloy Room got the start. And when I just still remember when that news broke about how completely and totally excited I was about something involving Columbus Crew. And, you know, I wonder how large the aneurysm was for Caleb Porter after the match, considering how many aneurysms he's had this season on the touchline. But I think more than anything, there's just that immense relief that you get, you know, when you finally get full points on something. And Montreal without Sagna now because of the red. But just really Montreal. But Columbus got the Duke.
Yeah, I mean, Montreal's on the road there. They did, you know, it was 1-1 at the half. Accam gets the early goal in the second half.
Yeah. Montreal's
just kind of there, and the problem is you've got New England there, Toronto there, Orlando City there. I'm not going to put Chicago there because I just don't have any faith in the Chicago Fire, and Columbus is even further back. Even with the win, Columbus is still 9 points out of a playoff spot with 11 matches left to play. Don't see any big changes for Columbus, but it is a win, and they do get a goal from Accam, who needs to factor in for them. If they're going to be anything next year, they're going to need a big year out of David Accam.
Yeah, and I want to see what the Haslams allow the front office to do in the offseason more than anything. I want to see now that they will have had a full year of them in charge as they get ready for the new stadium and all this kind of stuff, and try to put other city councils behind them. But no, I want to see what the Haslams allow the Crew to do going forward now that hopefully things are on the right path, at least off the pitch.
Well, two of David Accam's former teams met in Philadelphia, and Union won 2-0. Not really an exciting game. Philadelphia had a nicely worked free kick that led to the opener for Marco Fabian. Chicago just had nothing. They haven't won on the road since May of 2018. They didn't have Dax McCarty or Nico Gaitan, and while they are 7 points out of a playoff spot, they have 11 matches left, and they look lifeless.
Blow up the Fire.
They had their chance.
Set the fire on.
The schedule is set up nicely for them to pick up some points, and they have not taken advantage.
1 point out of the state of Ohio. And, you know, we've talked about the age of the Fire and the assets or lack of thereof that Chicago has when it comes to trying to go forward. And I literally shrug my shoulders every time I sit there and look at Chicago. I'm like, okay, what are you guys going to do? And I don't know what they can do with the assets they have and the assets that are aging. It's just, there are too many questions. And I think that Chicago has pinned themselves into a situation that it's going to be very, very difficult to get out of when it comes to the shuffling of assets to try to improve as a club.
They're old and they're just not that good. And
yeah,
they
that's
do
not a
have
good
a
combination.
few assets. I mean, Katai, you can get something for him. I think Frankowski, you could get something for him. You might be able to find a international club to take Nikolic off your hands. You've got a few things, but you need to start over. And you need to either – what's shocking to me is Veljko Paunovic won the U20 World Cup with Serbia. And for whatever reason, it feels like he gives up on young players very fast outside of Jordi Mihailovic. That's got to change because you're going to have to develop some players along the way. You're going to have to get some young guys and give them time to grow, and you haven't done that, so you're starting from scratch every single time. Let's get into the match north of the border. Toronto FC.
Okay.
7 changes to their lineup, and they gave up 3 goals to Houston. Mauro Manotas dribbled past everybody to put on the third one. They got one back once they realized at halftime, yeah, we should probably bring in Josie Altidore. And, a few minutes later, we should probably bring in Michael Bradley. Pozuelo missed the match with an injured ankle. That happens. But 7 changes, and Toronto loses 3-1 to the Houston Dynamo, who, by the way, are bad on the road. And, by the way, we're missing Albert Ellis. And also, by the way, we're coming off of a Wednesday match in Atlanta where they got housed. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to read 2 things for you. This is what we talked about yesterday that Matt Doyle wrote about Atlanta and D.C. Said, I still don't think they're playing particularly well, and it's hard to divine what they're building toward, but they have so much talent that they more often than not can brute force a solution. That was what Doyle wrote about Atlanta United. Bobby Warshaw, in his 24 takeaways, said, it's fair and accurate to call Atlanta slow and dull this year. But then he wanted to talk about don't take the frustration out on possession. He said, Atlanta seems to run out of ideas. They don't know what to do when they get to those moments. It's okay to be frustrated by the 5 stripes, but just don't take it out on the possession philosophy, please. Okay. Standings, just so you're aware. Atlanta's on 36 points through 22 matches. Toronto's on 29 points through 22 matches. Atlanta has a plus 10 goal differential. Toronto has a minus 1. Toronto just lost badly to a team that is 2-8 on the road. Now, in the game recap for this on MLSsoccer.com, I'm going to read the big picture comment. 2 teams right on the cusp of the playoff picture bucked recent trends, with Toronto's fatigue and squad rotation a primary driver. For Houston, the defend and counter approach to a road game matched their strategy for much of the 2017 playoff campaign, while TFC still should be confident in their starters, assuming Alejandro Pozuelo's swollen ankle doesn't linger. We talked about it yesterday. We talked about where Atlanta is discussed nationally a whole lot. We talked about how Toronto is discussed and how Toronto has been discussed since they won the treble in 2017. They should still be confident. They should really still be confident, even though they're right now a point out of the playoffs behind New England and Montreal. But they should still be confident. Meanwhile, Atlanta is slow and dull and predictable and really isn't playing that well and isn't building towards anything. I don't know. I'm just saying. John, I have a question for you. Why would you make 7 changes to your lineup after you beat the Red Bulls at home on Wednesday and you're facing a team that is traveling while you've stayed at home and a team that's missing their best player?
Don't we have a Vanny moment like this once a year?
I think he's had more than one a year. At least lately he has.
Publicly, he did say heat. He did use that as one of the reasons why.
It was hot?
Yeah.
So
short rests, temperatures, wanting to make sure that the squad was as prepared for it as, as you could be in that kind of a situation.
Okay. That's a reason.
Yeah. He was concerned about heat and having his players overheating and then having the short rest.
That's a comment. Who traveled, by the way, for this one?
I believe it would be the team not based in Toronto.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm looking at Houston's lineup here, and I think they made, outside of the Ellis change, obviously because they had to, Memo Rodriguez came back into the team. They made one other change?
Lundqvist?
Yeah, in for Garcia, and Hairston, Boniek Garcia in for Hairston and Ellie. So they made 3 changes. One by they had to. Oh no, sorry, Lundqvist for DeMarcus B. So they made more changes than that. But Houston is on the road. You would somewhat expect that.
Houston's awful on the road.
Yeah, and Toronto sat Omar Gonzalez, Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore. And Jacob Schaffelberg, who's been very good lately. I'm blown away.
Baffled.
I'm blown away. I was blown away when that lineup came out. I was blown away when Tommy McNamara scored in the 4th minute. I was blown away when Tomas Martinez made it 2-0 in the 23rd. Then Manotas ran through everybody in the 57th. Josie got one in the 75th. But I think I'm most blown away by the fact that Toronto should still be confident in their starters. Because
the first quote that you read in this block, the first Doyle quote, can you read that for me one more time? The one that started all these quotes?
Oh, I went away from that. I think basically they're not playing that well, to paraphrase.
But they've got a chance.
Oh no, the Doyle quote was not. There wasn't much of a chance for Atlanta. Atlanta's just bad. They're not playing that well, and they're not building towards anything.
Right. So could you not? So if you took the "not building towards anything" quote and just said it, leaving the team names out, could that not have applied just as much to the team that was not on the road in this particular matchup as the team that it was meant for in the first place?
I have no idea what Toronto's building towards. I mean, the lineup and formation changes. So let me just read Warshaw's comment on Toronto FC.
Yeah.
Forget it happened. Just forget it.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. He does go in on Laurent Simon, which I would completely agree with. He's been awful. And why did he play instead of Omar Gonzalez, who you just brought in?
Because you're resting
Omar
him because
Gonzalez
of the heat.
Being tired. He's the heat. He didn't play a lot in the Gold Cup. If he played, I don't remember off the top of my head. He didn't play a lot last season in Liga MX. Okay. I don't know. Yeah. Forget it happened. They'll be fine. Have confidence in Toronto, but Atlanta's awful and just awful.
Don't know what they're building toward.
They're not building towards anything. Yeah. Maybe a little frustrated with that. I apologize.
Get right on that.
Anyway, Dallas 2-0 over Sporting Kansas City on the road. That's a bad loss for Kansas City. They'd won 2 in a row. Yeah. Bad defensive mistakes. Dallas gets goals from Dominic Badji and from Jesus Ferreira, and Dallas is now in the 6th spot in the Western Conference. 5 points out of second, but only 2 points good above the line. Sporting Kansas City's 5 points below the line, but they have 13 matches left, and they are getting healthier, but that's points at home you can't drop if you're Kansas City.
2 shots on target. Yeah, you had 18 shots if you're Sporting, but only 2 of them were on target. 10 of them were off target. That's not a good sign.
No, that's not a good sign. Kansas City's just they're running out of that margin for error, so we'll see where they end up falling as the year goes on. Another road win, NYCFC in Colorado. Colorado gets an early goal, Sebastian Anderson, the teenager. Then he gets red carded. for a pretty nasty tackle in the 33rd minute, and New York City took full advantage of the man advantage. Hebert and Alexander Matricha get the goals. Matricha fairly late, and the Pigeons get a 2-1 win.
Yeah, and these are the wins if you're NYCFC that you sit there and you chalk up and go, okay, down 1-0, what's my team made of? And then the two guys that you brought in to help with putting the ball in the back of the net were the two that got you on the board. You know, usually you associate it with folks like a Maxi Morales or Tati Castellanos, who's been hot recently. But the two guys you brought in to help you on offense were the two that got the goals on the board. So this is a lot of folks going in. I forget what the Juicebox purveyor said about this one, but they might have been leaning toward a slight lean toward an NYCFC win.
Yeah.
These are the games that you would anticipate that they win. Took them a while to do it, but got the result they were looking for with the two guys that they brought in the first place.
Yeah, maybe not the way you anticipated, but they get it done.
No.
And NYC's 4-2-4 away from home. That's one of the better road records in the league. And they are number 2 in points per game in the Eastern Conference. They're number 5 on overall points because they've only played 19 matches. They've got a bunch to come. Now, it will be compressed for them, so it's not going to be completely easy because you got to make up some of those games in hand. But they've got a bunch of them, and they can climb that ladder pretty fast. RSL Minnesota, two teams that have both been pretty good as of late. RSL still just way too inconsistent for me, but Minnesota was coming in 4 straight wins. It's a 1-1 draw. They share the points. 2 second-half goals. I think the story for me on the Minnesota side is a player that we saw play as an outside back here in Atlanta. That's when he first broke into the team, but now he plays in his more favored defensive midfield role. Hassani Dotson, under the radar, one of the better rookies in the league this season. Playing outside back because the team needs him to and putting in good performances there, which is when it's not your position as a rookie, that says a lot about you as a player. And then to step in for Osvaldo Alonso in this one and play well on the road in a tough place to play in Utah, Hassani Dotson's a player to keep an eye on.
When it comes to Rookie of the Year, let me ask you, where does Dotson fall in the discussion?
Got to dig into it. I mean, he's on the list for me. I think he's worked his way into that list. Rookie of the Year, it's a little tricky because of some of the parameters of it. So you're looking at guys out of the super draft. You're looking at like homegrown signings who break in. Donovan Pines is one you want to keep an eye on. It took him a while to get into the team, but Pines is a player that you can consider. Who else would be in that list off the top of my head?
Didn't put you on
Jacob
the spot.
Schaffelberg, maybe, with Toronto, is another one to keep an eye on. And I think a lot of times what we're seeing now is rookies aren't coming in and starting day one, but they're earning time. And the awards kind of shifted a little bit. Because in the past, it was easier just to step straight in and start and do it. And you still get those from time to time. But Schaffelberg, Dotson, Pines, all guys who it took them a little bit of time to break in, and they're showing their quality, as they get that opportunity. Those are the 3 off the top of my head that I want to see more from. And I want to see more of their emergence. Sebastian Anderson for Colorado, even though he got the red card. Another young player, a homegrown signing, who has played and impressed, and he got the goal in this one, even though he did follow it up with a red card. So there's young talent breaking through in different ways, and it's not always just young talent from overseas or young talent straight out of the academy. You're getting some different types of young talent breaking in, and Hassani Dotson's one of those to make sure you're paying attention to. Out west, late Saturday night, San Jose 3-1 over Vancouver as expected. It's the second straight match San Jose had 32 shots. They outshot Vancouver 32-6. That's ridiculous. San Jose's only lost one time in their last 10, and they have moved into a tie for 4th place with Minnesota United. Minnesota United edges them on goal differential right now. But the Quakes are one of the best teams in the league at the moment.
And Vancouver is not. Power rankings with San Jose had them as high as either 2 or 3 in one of the publications that I was buzzing through early
now,
part of the
way
week.
they're playing, I would agree.
And this continues to reinforce, even though I know it was Vancouver and I know they're not very good, this just continues to reinforce to me about on a weekly basis that Matias Almeida is the coach of the year in MLS.
No question.
This season. No question.
It would take San Jose, I think, losing the rest of their games for that not to happen. He doesn't have the roster that's the perfect fit for the way he wants to play, but he's still been able to make it all work and get them playing the way he wants, but also, adapting a bit. It's been really impressive. What he's done with Tommy Thompson is really impressive, kind of turning him into an outside back, which was unexpected. Didn't really think Thompson had that in him, and he's been effective. Almeida has been the coach of the year, no question for me. Sunday matches, New England. They are 6-0-4 now since firing Brad Friedel. 2-0 winners in Cincinnati. Carlos Heel, one of the newcomers of the year, 7 goals, 8 assists. He scored in the 9th minute. De La Mea scored early in the second half. Pretty comprehensive win for the Revs, and right now they are above the playoff line in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and it's amazing what happens when the chaos that Brad Friedel seemed to have just instilled in that franchise goes out the door, and you bring in a stabilizing influence like a Bruce Arena. And it's once again, it reinforces that Cincinnati got a lot of work in front of them, and it's going to take a while. But matches like this, if you're New England, you have to take advantage of them. Chicago did not. New England did. That should tell you something.
Well, Red Bulls showed that kind of moxie as well. They went to Orlando after the midweek loss in Toronto and bounced back with a 1-0 win. It was not a dominant performance. Orlando hit the post 3 times, 4 saves for Luis Robles. Orlando was all over the Red Bulls' goal, especially in the second half. They could not find the breakthrough. These are the games that show you why, even though Orlando was the better team on the night, Orlando's in 9th place, 4 points out of a playoff spot, and the Red Bulls are in 4th, 4 points to the good of the playoff line. They've been there and done that, and Orlando is still learning how to do that.
Not every match against a team where the juice box purveyors have you as a prohibitive favorite to get the full points. It's going to go that way. You're going to have grinders. And with schedule compression being what it is, and with injuries with other teams or whatever the current situation is, whatever your team is that you follow, you're going to have games where you're expected to win, and it's going to take every effort in you and the roster that you put together and the philosophy changes in game and all the adjustments that go with it. You're going to have a grinder. This was a grinder for Red Bulls, and sometimes Lady Luck's going to be with you. When you hit the posts, when you hit the pipes, maybe it's your day. That all falls into it. Red Bulls end up with full points by the end of the night. Grinders happen. I feel like that should be on a T-shirt.
Yeah, wouldn't it be like a sandwich shop or something?
Grinders happen.
Yeah, it'd be a good sandwich shop shirt. It'd be a good sandwich shop. Just call it Grinders Happen.
Grinders subs.
Yeah, there you go. Portland 2-1 in Seattle. Is it a rivalry? First off,
oh God, yes,
it does. Okay, so Portland wins the rivalry match. The Cascadia.
It's Cascadia. It has a name.
Match. Well, that's a location, but anyway, Portland wins it 2-1, and as good as Carlos Heel has been as one of the newcomers of the year,
Prize Picks.
Ryan Fernandez. 2
okay.
goals for the Timbers. The guy just keeps scoring goals for Portland every single match, it seems like. And now, the Portland Timbers, through 20 matches, are 2 points out of a playoff spot. Okay, you're like, yeah, big deal, whatever. Here's Portland's rest of the way. They have 14 matches left. 2 on the road, 12 at Providence Park.
Uh-huh.
Portland is a team that, if LAFC slips up, Portland is a team that can push very high in the Western Conference.
Well, I mean, how far back did you say that Portland was going to make the playoffs?
I said it from the beginning of the season. I said it when the schedule came out. Because every single time a team has had a backloaded home schedule like this, they've made the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Every single time. Atlanta United, expansion team, did it. Toronto, done it. Who else has had construction stuff? DC last year.
Yeah.
No, there's no way they're making the play. Nah, did it. Portland, there was never a worry about them making the playoffs. But now they're, with the schedule they've had, they're 8-8-4. They're fine. 6-7-2 on the road. That's pretty good. That's a good year on the road if you're the Portland Timbers. You got 2 more trips.
And you did that front-loaded.
That's really impressive. And you didn't have Brian Fernandez at the very beginning. It took a while to get him in. You did, and it has paid off. All right, that's the weekend around MLS. We're going to take a quick break, get to a couple questions before the top of the hour, and Joe Patrick from Dirty South Soccer and 92.9 The Game will be joining us at 10 o'clock. Hang out with us. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Final segment, hour number 1, SDH on a Tuesday Thoughts edition. Y'all got thoughts? We have thoughts too, and we will share thoughts and trade thoughts.
Okay. Daniel Price, who we, I guess, send a salute for being a Prize Picks winner recently. I saw that.
Yeah, nicely done.
He apparently got some swag. Swag. He says he needs some help.
Works.
It's the most important question. What's for breakfast? Chick-fil-A, Waffle House, Taco Bell, Del Taco, or the Golden Arches?
Okay, run through them one more time.
Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
Waffle House.
Yep.
Taco Bell, Del Taco, or Golden Arches.
Okay, out of those, McDonald's is fine. Not spectacular, but fine for breakfast.
Yeah, it's fine.
I've not had Taco Bell or Del Taco breakfast.
No,
I cannot comment.
Kind of scary.
I haven't had Taco Bell, I think, since 2009. Somewhere around there. So
Except for dinner?
I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But, yeah, I have not partaken in the Taco Bell in quite a while, so would not be able to tell you much. And I don't have a Del Taco near me, so can't help you on that one. If you have time to sit down and you want something kind of bigger, Waffle House is great. Otherwise, Chick-fil-A is the bomb. I mean, it's the chicken biscuit is the absolute bomb, and every once in a while the chicken minis I like. But But the chicken biscuit, man, it's ridiculous. So that's what I'll do. If I go to McDonald's, I have been known to not go to the breakfast menu and just get apple pies for breakfast.
Ooh, smart play.
That's good.
I like that.
It's good stuff. It's
but then do you get the ice cream to go with it?
No, not for breakfast. No, you just eat it like it's a turnover or something, like a Danish. It's a McDonald's breakfast Danish, except it's an apple pie.
Shiva, maybe the Galaxy looks at it more as a rivalry than LAFC does. Galaxy looks at LAFC as a newcomer and think they are the LA team, not LAFC.
I think they both do, and I think that's what's great about it is that, I mean, LA Galaxy, yeah, they'll absolutely tell you that they have to keep it up with what's going on with LAFC. It's why they signed Zlatan. It's why they paid him crazy money, and it's why they went out and got him, because LAFC came in last year and just grabbed everybody's attention. We talked about it. Man, I think Jarrett and I talked about it on some of the early Peachtree Post podcasts about what are the Galaxy going to do when LAFC arrives, because they are going to be in that situation that the Red Bulls were in when NYC arrived. And you know LAFC was going to spend. You knew they were going to bring in big-name players, and they did in Carlos Vela. They didn't go quite as big a name as you thought they might, but you knew they were going to be big, and when they started branding themselves, hey, it was good branding. So the Galaxy are looking at it like, man, we've got to stay relevant. What do we do? And 2017, They were just flailing all over the place because Bruce Arena left at the end of 16, and Kurt Analfo was he's just not a first-team manager. He's a great assistant. So it failed. They brought on Siggy. It took a long time for him to get going late in 17 because the roster was just bad. So all that leads into 2018 when LAFC arrives, and they're the darlings. So I do completely think that the Galaxy look at it as a rivalry about maintaining their dominance of Los Angeles. LAFC has a brash attitude. They're going to come in and think it's a rivalry because they want to be the kings of Los Angeles, and you get the fireworks that are great. It's a rivalry. It's definitely two teams that do not want the other one to exist. That's okay.
Ryan wants to know, isn't Akam headed to Nashville next year?
Is David Akam headed to Nashville next year?
I thought he was.
Is that? Yeah, I believe that is correct, if I remember right. Yeah, that's right. They did that deal. Man, I completely forgot about that. Good shout.
Yeah, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
$450,000 in allocation money.
Completely forgot about that one. Good call. That's we talked about LAFC just a second ago coming in and what they did. Now you're starting to get those rumblings about what Nashville and what Miami are going to do. Nashville, okay, they've got Akam. They've got Daniel Rios, who's having a very good year in the USL Championship. They've got Cameron Lancaster, who's had injuries this year. Do they have anybody else on an MLS deal that's there right now? I want to say they do. I think they've got one more. Not any, just mind-blowing talents yet, but they're starting to build their base. And I think they'll sign a few players from their USL Championship team as well. Then you've got Miami that they're going to do something big. They have to. But what? And when? And that's what we're all waiting on. So as much as this year is a great season in MLS with all the stuff going on and rivalries and anger and animosity and deals and I think what's going to be a great playoff race, you've got two new teams coming in next year, and one is going to come in and make every splash they can possibly make, and then Nashville is going to have some expectations. They cannot do what Cincinnati's done. So I'm excited. There's just it's always evolving, always something new to talk about.
Derek Jones.
That's it. I knew they had one more, Derek Jones, and that's a good pickup, too. I really like that one. He's a guy who hasn't gotten enough time yet. Let's take a break here. We've got Joe Patrick waiting for us. We're going to get him on the line. We'll ask him about the expansion teams coming in next year. We'll ask him about rivalries. We'll ask him about Atlanta and D.C., and we'll start to look ahead. Atlanta and LAFC on Friday. Hang out with us. We'll be right back.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky and Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, July 23rd. Tuesday thoughts. Gotten a few of your thoughts. We'll get more as we go this morning, but let's get Joe Patrick's thoughts right now, live from the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta Training Ground. Joe Patrick of Dirty South Soccer and 92.9 The Game. What's up, Joe?
Not a whole lot. Just kind of flying by the seat of my pants this week, working, but everything's good.
Attaboy.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you were at Mercedes-Benz Stadium covering Atlanta United in D.C. and then immediately took off we don't have hats or anything in the soccer world, but you put on the Braves hat and then we're covering the Braves game that day.
Yeah, that's correct. So
because you started talking exit velocities like an hour after the game, and I was confused.
Yep. And then I was at Falcons yesterday, so this is all kinds of the wacky world of sports here with my week so far.
And fly fishing later in the week.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Good time. You're going to need some fly fishing after this week. Atlanta United might need some fly fishing after, I think, a stressful win, but a good win. I mean, I think you feel really good about it afterwards, but there was some stress because, in my mind, DC came in and played really well and defended really well and made Atlanta work for everything they got.
Yeah, I like that, the way you describe it there is stressful because, right, I think that's what this team needed. I think this team has kind of needed a game in which they play well, but things don't kind of go their way exactly kind of the way they planned it. And I think what we saw against DC was them just continued to try to impose their will, try to, execute their game plan throughout the game, no matter, through the ups and downs. It wasn't a perfect game that the team played by any means, but I think that what we saw was a team that just played with a lot more aggression, in my opinion. I think that it was aided by the team set up in a back three. I thought that I think the back three really sets up well for the two of the center backs, Franco Escobar and Leandro Gonzalez-Perez, to kind of be their aggressive selves, right? These guys, especially a guy like Leandro Gonzalez-Perez, I find fascinating. If you look at his advanced metrics, he's really defensively is not the strongest part of his game. The strongest part of his game is his passing and the ways he helps the team, in build up, in possession, and helps them, build up the play to score goals. And I think that when we look at, it's easy to say, oh, well, a center back, their defending should be his best attribute, but that's just not, there are things that a center back does that aren't necessarily defending all the time, especially in the kind of system and the way that Atlanta United wants to play. So I think that the formation really kind of suited what those players like to do, and it let them be more aggressive all over the field, I thought, and it was exciting to watch.
you mentioned exciting to watch. Then there was a substitution that happened with Frank DeBoer, and P.T. Martinez comes in and was the catalyst for the two goals that Atlanta United end up with in the final couple of minutes. There are times when we look at a player and you see something and you just kind of shake your head, or you sit there and you see what a player does and an expletive comes out of your mouth out of just sheer, unbelievability that they can do something like they do. But when P.T. Martinez came on, I think the tenor of the match changed, Joe.
Yeah, when you bring in someone like him for a player like Brandon Vazquez, I think it's very difficult for a team to adjust to that, because they're two just very different types of players. And when they come into a game, their objective is to do, different kinds of things, or they're going to go about it in a different way. Brandon Vazquez is all about using his physicality. And I think we saw him do that in a really effective way against DC United. It was unfortunate that, as the game wore on, he just kind of, he lost the flow of the game a bit, couldn't connect with the passes as well as he was in the first half. But I really liked the way that he kind of put himself about and made himself effective. But then when you bring on a guy like P.T. Martinez, he's going to bring something totally different to the game. And I think that we saw, what he can provide, just like these special moments. I know you've talked about him, El Diferente, or, his whatever nickname that you want to attribute to someone with kind of his quality and his class on the ball. I think we just really saw that, and it was really great to see him affect the game in the way he did, especially at the end, of course. I really think for the second assist, or the second goal in which he assisted, I thought it was really impressive the way that not just the technical ability that it takes to pull off something as audacious as he did, but I thought it was really good to see him understand the mentality that DC United had in that moment and be able to recognize, okay, I know they're going to be kind of overplaying, and if I can get this flick off, Joseph's going to be in tons of space and in behind for a goal. And I think that, it's kind of, he has that experience, that kind of, cerebral mentality where he can affect the game in that way, even sometimes when his technical ability isn't maybe there in a certain game. He has the experience to know how he can try to exploit the opposition one way or another. So hopefully this is just like kind of a trampoline effect for him. It's a launching off point for some better performances, because obviously, what he's shown this season, I'm sure has been disappointing for himself. I'm sure he couldn't have been happy, coming off the bench for these last two games, but hopefully this is a sign of things to come for him. And I think that, Frank DeBoer is going to have a selection problem here, because I don't know how you kind of fit Joseph Martinez and P.T. Martinez and Ezequiel Barco into a team. But, that's what they'll pay Frank DeBoer to do. And he's made no bones about it that, he's willing to make those tough decisions.
Yeah, you're going to have some sacrifices in the 11 if you stick to the 3-5-2. Even if you go 4-3-3, you're going to have some sacrifices. Whatever you do, you're going to have some talented players, even potentially not in the 18 because of the quality overall of this roster. But there were a couple things about Pitti on Sunday that grabbed my attention, and they really had nothing to do with his play on the field. After Joseph missed the penalty, it was Pitti who went straight up to him and checked on him and made sure everything was good and kind of rallied the troops a little bit. And then the interaction that Fox 5 had with Pitti and Justin Merrim afterwards, I think there's been a lot of questions about, is Pitti happy? Does he want to be here? All those types of things. Those two things for me, and then as well as Leandro Gonzalez-Perez's reaction with Pitti after the goal, all of that says that this team's pretty strong and pretty together.
Yeah, I mean, they're close. It's a shame kind of the way that these things can be distorted in the media, because, the way that media is set up is it's kind of artificial at times. They bring player into a room surrounded by cameras and lights and recording devices, and they're very out of their element. The players are in that moment when they're talking to media. Some players, of course, are more equipped and just understand, how to deal with those situations better than others. American players kind of understand this is the media landscape, and not to say that Argentine players aren't familiar with the media or anything, but it's just a very different feeling than seeing those players in what I would call their natural habitat, surrounded by their fellow teammates. And, yeah, I thought that it was great. I thought it was great to see exactly those moments you talked about. Also, like when Pitti scored the goal as well, Joseph was right there, and they kind of had like an emotional embrace there. It was really good to see.
Bro hug, yes.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of emotion being let out at that time from both of them. I think that Joseph was just as happy for Pitti as Pitti was for himself to have scored that goal. So. Yeah, it's there's a good team unit in here, and I feel like sometimes that can get people can have misconceptions about that kind of thing based on especially the recent quotes from the Argentine media and that whole brouhaha with Frank de Boer and Pitti Martinez. But the relationship is good. These people work together every day, and there aren't there aren't scuffles happening or anything like that. It's a good environment in the team, and winning obviously helps, of course, but and that's one reason why it was important for this team. But yeah, I mean, these guys like each other a lot, and hopefully those relationships can just continue to develop and grow.
You mentioned relationships developing and growing, and I know that we've talked about Justin Meram and being placed out on the edge out of necessity this past match. But let me go into the center of everything and talk about Emerson Hyndman and get your continued analysis of what we're seeing with him as he's integrating into starting 11s and 18s in the time that he's been here. What's the continuing Joe Patrick analysis of Hyndman in the middle?
Well, I've loved what he's brought to this team. I think he's what you're seeing him bring to the middle of the park is kind of exactly what Atlanta has been missing to this point in the season. I think Frank de Boer tried to experiment using Julian Gressel in a midfield three in that type of role, and I think Julian can excel against certain opponents in that position. But when it's 3v3 in the middle, you really need someone who's good in tight spaces, who can take the ball in the half turn, who can evade someone with a man on his back. And I think that, we can see Emerson Hyndman do that very similarly to the way that Darlington Nagbe does it. And I think that, what Emerson gives you is he gives you a little bit more creativity and combination play in the final third. And I think that that's been kind of lacking from this team as far as the central midfielders go. And again, his performances play into this selection dilemma that Frank de Boer will have when some of these guys get healthy, because we've talked about basically the three DPs. How do you fit them all in the team? Well, how do you fit them in the team with a guy like Emerson Hyndman, who's come in and the team has really only gotten good results when he's been starting in games? So, he's a fascinating character to me because he's, obviously kind of a lower profile and stuff like that, but he's playing as effectively right now as anybody else in the team. So I'm really excited for him. Frank de Boer talked about, he wants players knocking on the door, and he said that Emerson is one of those guys who's knocking right now, and he's kind of by his performances, he's not doing anything that would see him losing his starting spot, because Frank de Boer talked about that's the reason he kept Brandon Vasquez in the starting lineup against DC United, was because, he didn't do anything against Houston that deserved for him to be dropped. And I think that you have to kind of put Emerson in that kind of similar boat where he's not really doing anything that there's no reason to drop him from the team. So that's where these selection problems come in for Frank de Boer.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the 18 looks like on Friday night. And let's start to get into this. LAFC is the opponent. They've had the best season so far in 2019 across the league, although they're coming in after their first real kick to the mouth with the LA Galaxy beating them at Dignity Health Sports Park. What are your concerns about LAFC?
Well, of course, my concern, first of all, is focused on just Atlanta United and their road form right now. It's just not been good, especially since coming off of this break in the season, this midseason international break. But of course, LAFC are also a big problem as well. They're just amazing. They're fun to watch. I love watching them on whenever I get a chance, and I love the way they hunt down the ball. I always say that when a coach has set up his tactics correctly, when it seems like they have 12 or 13 players on the field going against 11. And I always feel that way with LAFC. It always feels like they have more players on the field than the other team. And you have to give them credit the way they just hunt down the ball relentlessly. A lot like, we're accustomed to seeing here, especially, under some of Tata Martino's teams when Tata played with a back four, it was just like that kind of hyper aggressive way of playing, which is so fun to watch. So I can't wait for the match. I think that, when it comes down to what will give Atlanta success, I think that let's go back to, looking at the formation. And it's kind of a similar situation that the team is in now as to what they were in last season. When it came to the playoffs, Tata Martino realized like he had to win. Of course, you lose, you're out. So you need to win these games. By doing that, the best way to do it was to maybe not play all of your most talented players in the same lineup together. Maybe the smartest move was to play, a back three with Miles Robinson in the back instead of, someone like Ezequiel Barco playing in midfield. And so I feel like, that Frank de Boer is going to be in a similar situation with this team where, we've talked about all these players that he could play, but is it really smart for the team to get results to play all these guys in the same lineup? And I don't think it is. I think that you're more likely to win games when you have more security at the back, where, you've got cover when players do make mistakes, because like, let's be realistic. This is Major League Soccer. These are not the best players in the world, and they're going to be more prone to make mistakes. So you need to safeguard against that. And I think that one of the ways you do that is, what we've seen from both Tata Martino and Frank de Boer is to just make sure you have cover there to provide, to cover up those mistakes. Because if you don't, you're going to get exposed like we've already seen this season. So I think that, when it comes to LAFC, I think we'll continue to see that three at the back. And, as for who starts, I don't think Ezequiel Barco will probably be fit to go, although he is looking good in training today. I just feel like if he didn't get any minutes against DC United, there's probably not going to be a chance of him starting the game in LA. But I would expect him to play at some point. And, the good news for Atlanta is, if you have a guy like Ezequiel Barco coming off the bench, there's so much quality on the bench that Frank de Boer has lots of options he can turn to in the middle of a game to change it one way or another. If he needs to shore things up defensively, he can put on a guy like a Jeff Lorenowitz, like we saw in the DC game. Or, if he needs to go more attacking, he can put on, one of his many quality attacking players that he's got available to him.
One of the things that we've also seen with De Boer this season is that when he does have to make a substitution, the substitutions, short of delaying substituting players against Monterrey in CONCACAF Champions League, De Boer has gotten the substitution pattern right every single time.
Yeah, he really has. It's been probably one of his strengths this season is being able to analyze kind of the way a game is going and make the adjustments, as you say. And it's something that sounds simple. Sounds like, a coach should definitely be able to do that. But, anybody who's been following soccer for a long time, I'm sure they've been through their fair share of coaches who don't seem to maybe want to make the right changes at the right time or just don't seem to be capable of, wrong, because it can be difficult sometimes to kind of analyze the game from a coach's perspective when you're on the touchline. It's funny. Some coaches actually want to sit a few rows up just to get a better view of things, so they can just better examine what's actually happening on the field. But I think you have to give De Boer a lot of credit, and I think that I have to think that part of that goes into his playing experience and knowing when a guy is tired and kind of like what happens mentally and physically to a player when he wears down like that. And I feel like he's been very good at knowing which players he needs to take out. Of course, he kind of puts his foot in his mouth a bit when he says after the game that these players are dangerous to the team, which is just seems to be the phrase he uses for a player needs a sub, because he said it about Brandon Vazquez after the DC game. But I think you have to give him a lot of credit, because I feel like whenever he's made those calls, they've, for the most part, been the right decisions. And I think you have to kind of, his experience plays a big role in that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he has a really good feel for the game and where those moments are that it's time to make a change. And maybe the danger to the team comment is a little bit of a lost in translation kind of moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Like.
Yeah.
I want to ask you before we finish up, thoughts on Zlatan, the elbow, what should happen here, because there's I think a growing chorus of people, and ESPN FC was added to that yesterday, that feel like a suspension should be warranted for that elbow on Mohamed El Munir.
I think it's a clear suspension. I think that if that happens, if a referee sees that in game, it's a red card and a 3-match ban for violent conduct. And I don't think that there's really much debate about it. I mean, especially when you see it on the replay that he lines him up twice, not even once, but he glances at the player twice to kind of line up his shot. And I mean, there's so much to kind of unpack with Zlatan, and I don't want to go into all of it, but yeah, I mean, that foul to me, that foul to me is a clear red card offense, and one that is a danger to play. That's the thing, is when players are in danger by this guy being on the field, then he can't be on the field. And, you know, he should get punishment for what he did in that moment. And in my opinion, this is why we have, you know, things like, you know, the disciplinary committee who can go back and look at these things, and they need to do their jobs in this instance, in my opinion. Like, if they don't administer punishment for this, they're not doing their jobs.
Yep, I completely agree with you. You've got a ton of stuff coming up over at 92.9 The Game with Braves and Falcons, but what do you have at Dirty South Soccer coming up on Atlanta United? Yeah,
we're just about to publish a really good article from Payson Schwinn, kind of breaking down Frank de Boer's post-game thoughts again today. So we'll do that. And then I also just want to, you know, give a shout out to Rob Usry and Sam Jones, who do kind of like our post-match, a lot of our like post-match opinion and commentary. Please go back and read their stuff. I know, like, especially Sam, you know, he does our match recap after every game. And I know match recaps are kind of not always you don't think they're going to be a good read because you watch the game and you don't need to understand what happened, or you already understand what happened. You don't kind of need to be told again, but go read his recaps. They're entertaining. They're thought-provoking, and you will not have, you know, you won't be kicking yourself for spending the 5 to 10 minutes reading them. They're really good, so I encourage everybody to check those out.
Yeah, 100% agree with that, Sam. And Rob, I mean, I've worked with Rob for a long time. Rob puts in a ton of work and has grown that site into one of the powerhouses in MLS and SB Nation. And Sam is such a unique talent in his writing.
Yeah.
He does take a match recap that can be kind of just there, and it's something you got to read every week.
Yeah, must read, in my opinion.
Yeah, completely agree. Joe, thanks for the time, man. Try to get some rest, and good luck with the fly fishing.
I was telling Doug I need to work on my napping skills. That's like the next skill I need to hone. Is like, how do I take naps? Man. Yeah. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, Joe.
Be good.
See ya.
Let's take a break right here. We'll get into more Tuesday thoughts right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show. Lots more thoughts from you guys on the Twitters at Soccer Down here. Want to get into an article real quick that was just posted a little bit ago over at the Philadelphia Inquirer. A friend of the show, Jonathan Tannenwald, with an update on kind of where the NWSL is at the moment and what they're doing to capitalize on the Women's World Cup and everything that happened in France this summer. Just a couple of highlights from it. I highly recommend going to check this out. We'll put my hand up and say that I am a subscriber to the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I am a subscriber to the Inquirer specifically because of Jonathan Tannenwald's work. He covers the women's game at a level that I don't think any other mainstream journalist does. There's great sites out there like The Equalizer that have covered the women's game for a long time, but in mainstream newspaper media, Jonathan is the best. And if you want to keep up with it, along with just great coverage of MLS as a whole, specifically the Philadelphia Union, the game in the Northeast, all of that, Jonathan is one of the best out there. But the highlights of this article for me, there had been a lot of talk about the Budweiser sponsorship deal and announced with a full-page ad in the New York Times the day of the final. Soccer United Marketing was involved in that deal, and Merritt Paulson, the owner of the Portland Thorns and the Timbers, and the league's most influential executive, said that some did the deal, quote, pro bono. They did not take a commission or a fee. Amanda Duffy, the president of the NWSL, said that our relationship with some and with Major League Soccer is a growing relationship. It's important to them, and it was important in that specific dialogue related to Budweiser. They wanted to express their support and show that support in a tangible way. Very cool to see, and that needs to grow. Don't know if it's going to be formal. Duffy said that it won't in the short term. It's still going to be NWSL HQ that is making these decisions, but they are engaged, and it sounds like there's a lot more conversation between Soccer United Marketing and NWSL and finding ways to work together. That needs to happen. If it's formal, informal, whatever, that needs to happen. It's good for the game and good for the NWSL. Expansion. Talked about LAFC, Atlanta United, and FC Cincinnati, which are three MLS teams that Tannenwald mentions that are reportedly thinking about expansion in the NWSL. Also mentions, and I had not heard about this yet, a group in Hartford, Connecticut, led by U.S. national team legend Christine Lilly, that is trying to bring a team to Hartford, Connecticut. Had not heard that one yet. Merritt Paulson is really the leader of trying to grow the league, and he said, we've had 3 prospective ownership groups at 3 different Portland Thorns games this year, and they visited Salt Lake and talking to North Carolina as well. We're very well versed in the pitch, and we're not trying to paint an overly rosy picture either. Our goal is not just to get people to commit to the league, but have people commit and be able to succeed. Paulson wouldn't name the cities. Duffy wouldn't name the cities, obviously. Duffy did say that the cities are being talked about for expansion during the 2020 season and as far out as 2022. Paulson did say this. He said there's been some speculation about certain markets that are interested, and some of it's right and some of it's not. There's 2 markets in particular that I think would be Portland-esque in the type of support and relevance they could potentially have. So, keep that in mind. Also, once it got a little bit further, there's more talk about the behind the scenes and how the league will be positioned and what the partnership with the U.S. Soccer Federation looks like. The other one that grabbed my attention was on the roster structure and on the salary type of structure. The need to add a designated player situation where you could add players like Ada Hegerberg or Vivian Medina or Jennifer Hermoso from Spain. Wendy Renard is another one that was mentioned. You have players who play overseas that would like to play in the United States. That's a definite. Vero Boquet, Spanish midfielder, not part of Spain's national team currently, but she's come to the U.S. She's also played for Bayern Munich. She's played for PSG. And she wants to see this designated player rule in the U.S. She plays for the Utah Royals right now. Amanda Duffy said, I think that's a natural part of the evolution of the league, to look at policies such as a designated player policy or a homegrown player policy. I think it's more about timing than it is about whether it's right or wrong. Would love to see both, because then you're getting both sides of it. You're able to recruit talent from overseas and also keep talent that's in your league as overseas clubs grow and start spending more money. And then you get the development side as well when you look at homegrowns. And does it have to be exactly how MLS does it? No. But the idea behind a designated player and the idea behind a homegrown player to help grow the NWSL, both policies make a lot of sense. And would love to see those types of additions to the league. So a lot of updates in this article. Those are the highlights. There's plenty more info in it. Go check it out over at the Philadelphia Inquirer.
For me, when I'm looking at expansion, I want to see it. But for me, I want stability when it comes to ownership groups who are coming in. And I'm hoping that the owners, the prospective owners that are coming to see Merritt Paulson and see how things are run. I'm glad that Merritt Paulson is being upfront, open, and honest about the whole process. But I don't want another Sky Blue.
I don't think that's an issue, John. Like I don't even think you're getting about those kinds of people interested anymore, because if you're talking about MLS clubs and even USL clubs, which were mentioned, I think Louisville City would be one that I could easily see go NWSL. You're not talking about fly-by-the-night groups. I think the league's outgrown that. And Sky Blue and your former Boston Breakers and others were, part of the earlier iteration. I don't think that's at all what they're looking at going forward. I don't think that's even a consideration.
Good, because I'm just want the vetting process to be right up and square, and I want the league to go forward. I want it to be in other markets and be solid going forward. And I love the idea of the DP and the homegrown stuff to add to the roster makeups going forward. And it does seem like it should be the next evolution of the roster sizes.
Yeah, you're going to have to do something. I mean, you're not going to be able to just blow up the salary cap and do it that way. I think you're going to have to make the step that MLS made in 2007 when they added the designated player idea and brought in David Beckham. I've said I feel like the NWSL is really where MLS was around that time. I feel like it's kind of after the 2002 World Cup for MLS, and it took them a little while to figure out the designated player idea and fight for it. And the LA Galaxy fought for it and led the way and got it done and showed the value in it. So the NWSL has that blueprint, and I think it's time for them to do the same. They're going to have to. If they want to keep players who Chelsea or Real Madrid or Barcelona or PSG wants to sign, they're going to have to come up with a way to pay them more. And that's the way to do it. However you structure it, however you do it in terms of a cap, or you have X number of DPs or whatever, you're going to have that opportunity. You need to do it now to get out in front of it instead of creating a rule on the fly to keep a player because they have a big offer elsewhere.
Making sure that you keep the likes of a Sam Kerr here.
It seems like especially after, stay, but that's not going to happen over time where you start offering this big money.
Right. Are you, sir, ready to head back to the Twitters?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Tafka, in our discussion about stuff that we were reading that was illogical from the folks at the league level, he says that Extra Time absolutely loves to hate on Atlanta. This is Tafka. It's so often, and if Atlanta is not absolutely dominating every second of the match, end quote, then they're flailing. Given our injuries and major turnover, being in second and on pace for first is incredible.
Yeah, I honestly just don't even understand it anymore. It's fascinating to me when you compare it with Toronto, and it's one thing to be skeptical of Atlanta United because of a new manager this year, because of no Miguel Almiron, all those things. That's all completely fine. It's valid. I don't know if it's valid anymore. I think it was valid in March. But when you compare it to Toronto and the constant propping up of Toronto since they won the treble in 2017, which was an amazing accomplishment, all last year, really up until the point that they were eliminated from the playoffs was, well, they can get in. They can get in. They can turn it on. They can get in. They had a ton of injuries, and they had valid excuses. Nobody's talking about the fact that Atlanta United is playing Dion Pereira or Justin Merrim as a left wing back, and they switched to a 3-5-2 partially to get the quality of Julian Gressel out wide, but also partially because you didn't have a left back. Oh, yeah, and you didn't have a right back when Franco Escobar was suspended. So nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about the absence of Ezekiel Barco since May 8th, since the New England match. Nobody's talking about the fact that Barco was away with the U20s and then injured in an Open Cup match against Columbus where he was kicked out of the game. Those things get left out, but man, injuries were talked about a lot with Toronto. We talked about it a lot because it was a valid part of the conversation. Now you're still in the same boat for Toronto, and nothing's really changed, and they botched the Sebastian Giovinco transfer, in my opinion. They didn't handle it well. They took forever to get Pozuelo. It did pay off because he is that good. They still haven't really replaced Victor Vasquez. We'll see how these new additions look once they get fully going. They finally do get Omar Gonzalez. It's Toronto. I don't know why. That's the thing that I don't get. I'm used to national media looking down on Atlanta teams. That's if you followed Atlanta sports, since I was a kid, it's just how it is. It's just how it is. It's how it will always be. I don't ever see that changing. The Falcons are never taken seriously when they've gotten to a Super Bowl. It's always been, oh, well, yeah, whatever. That's not going to work. Now, they haven't backed it up either, but they've always been looked down upon when they've been good. You look at the Braves and what they did in their historic run. Well, they only won one World Series, so they didn't do anything. The Hawks, when they won 60 games, they're nothing. Got to the Eastern Conference Final, they're nothing.
Buffalo Bills lost all those Super Bowls.
But, man, people talk a lot about the Buffalo Bills and how great they were, don't they? Don't talk about that with the Braves. Just how it is, and that's how it's going to be. Like, you kind of accept that, but when you compare it with Toronto, and that's what I keep coming back to the more I hear on the Toronto side and the Atlanta side, I'm kind of blown away by it, to be honest, because I don't know why Toronto gets the preferential treatment of being propped up in a lot of ways for things that, look, I have never seen Tata Martino or Frank DeBoer botch a lineup like Greg Vanney did on Saturday and throw points away. Just completely throw them in the trash. Never seen that. It's just crazy. And that's just swept under the rug. Well, they were tired. They didn't travel. Houston traveled. Houston should have been more tired. No, they were tired. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. It's just, it is what it is. But we'll keep talking to you about what we see and give you our opinions because that's what we're here to do.
Snowman chimes in this morning, and he apparently called New England to making the playoffs. He says that prediction's looking good as of now.
No, I did.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. I thought he was mentioning it to the both of us that he called New England making the playoffs.
No, I did.
Okay, sorry. My modifiers have been misplaced.
Yes, there was ... Longshoe called New England making the playoffs. Prediction looking good as of now. It's not going to be easy. I mean, I think they're positioned to do it. I do think that Montreal is the one that falls out, and Toronto should get in. And if they don't, what will the excuses be? I don't know.
Oh, injuries, heat.
It's hot in Toronto.
Transitioning.
Omar Gonzalez can't handle the heat.
Yeah.
We'll start him and pull him out
Shiva.
in 60 minutes then.
Yeah. Shiva. Looking back at the DC match, DC had two very good chances to hit us on the counter and score 2 goals. We were playing such a high line that one bad pass could hurt us. Do you see any changes going forward that would eliminate these dangerous counters?
This is the conundrum, isn't it? Atlanta United's a defensive team and they play defensive soccer, but they had everybody playing in the attacking half. That's the conundrum. that's why I think it's been false that it's a defensive team and they're not trying to attack and those things. They were playing on the edge. They were playing really on the edge in the second half. They did a good job of doing that. Gwen agrees. She likes Atlanta playing on the edge. It's a thing where DC was starting to wilt and Atlanta was able to put more pressure forward. Now, my question long term is, in that situation, LGP running with Paul Arriola is a bad matchup. What DC did really well was they switched Arriola, Acosta, and Lucas Rodriguez a lot. Arriola would run through the middle sometimes. He'd run down the right sometimes. He'd run down the left sometimes. Acosta would drop into the midfield. He'd pop up on the outside. Lucas Rodriguez was not as influential, but he was moving around too. So it was hard to stick with consistent matchups. I think Atlanta has to be careful in those moments, though, especially after it happens once. You have to then realize, okay, they're trying to free up Arriola to run. The only two guys we have who can run with him are Escobar and Robinson. One of them have to be with Arriola at all times. And if that means they move over to the left or they move over to the right or they move to the middle, that's what they do. That's something that was a little disturbing because it did happen multiple times. DC's best moment of the match was in that 30 to 40 minute mark of the first half where they were bringing Atlanta out, they were turning them over at midfield, and then Acosta's just looking to pop it long. And, I mean, that pass is coming from 10, 15 yards inside his own half. Arriola starting his run 10 yards in his own half, so he can't be offside. It's a well-worked situation from DC, and you could tell it was something they were looking for. And that's the conundrum for Atlanta. If you're going to be an attacking team, a possession team, you're going to get everybody up high. You can't be disconnected because then when you turn it over, players are running into space. Or you're going to have Paul Arriola making runs from a deeper position to hurt you. So you can't do that. But you've got to be ready to deal with those situations better. And Atlanta did adjust, and DC also tired. But that's something to be worried about. It's something that Atlanta has to do a better job with because those are the moments that can break you. And it's not new. We've seen it over the years. When Atlanta plays on that edge, whether it's because everybody's up high pressing because they don't have the ball, or they're up high, playing because they have the ball and they're working the ball around. Either way, you've got to have a structure and a plan to deal with when the ball turns over and Luciano Acosta is just popping it over you and letting players run on. And Atlanta took a little while to figure that out because DC had a couple moments there in a short period of time.
A couple of folks with some personal questions.
Uh-oh.
Ricky Ricardo says, I know it's been a bit, but did we ever get clarification on why the Atlanta LAFC game got moved from Saturday night to Friday night? I'm getting married on Saturday, so it was going to be during my reception, so I'm pretty happy about it, but just curious.
TV. I mean, it's just flat out national TV. I've always thought the Friday night time slot was a good one for Major League Soccer. It's a spot where they're standalone. And, I mean, I guess you have Liga MX's competition, but usually not a high-profile game. Friday night's not their big night. So
it's usually a later match anyway.
Yeah. Friday night is the time that I think MLS can do really well. They used to do the deal with Unimas on Friday nights, and I thought they got pretty good ratings for those. But it sounds like ESPN and Fox have honed in on, if we have the opportunity to move a game by itself to Friday night, we're going to do it in the summer, and it's going to work. I think that's why they did it. El Tráfico, I have not seen ratings yet for El Tráfico, but that was a Friday night standalone. This is a Friday night standalone. I think they're going to use that as a showcase time slot.
Daniel Price updated us on his breakfast plans.
Okay.
He initially was going to go Del Taco. He says he'd never been. He looked at the menu, and then, oh, Lord, does it look tasty, but then denied. They don't serve breakfast in Gainesville. Depression.
Womp, womp, womp.
See, that's Price's right horn right there, if that ever was.
Bad time.
Then, yes. Joel at Mr. Runner 76. Sorry if this has been discussed since Frank DeBoer sent the tactical note to Nagbe. Is he basically a de facto captain since Guzan was in goal?
Maybe. It's easier for Nagbe to to make the organization happen there than for Brad to in that moment. So, yeah, and I think that maybe one of the changes in set piece marking involved Nagbe. So that was another part of it. You had to change it with Vasquez coming off because, Pitti and Vasquez are very different levels of set piece markers. One's going to do it and be good at it. The other one is not going to be very good at it. So you've got to move pieces around, and for Nagbe to organize that, it made some sense. I don't know who else would have done it. That's the one that, probably would make the most sense. We've seen DeBoer call Nagbe over many times in matches to talk about stuff. So not really surprised by it.
And Daniel did end up going to Chick-fil-A and thought it was awesome.
That's right.
Tafka, continuing his thought on rivalry versus storied rivalry, says having a rivalry is a complex formula of excessive animosity, regional location, and anticipation. I agree a rivalry can begin and end quickly or begin and maintain itself. That leads to a storied rivalry where the history of the rivalry is tantamount to lore.
That's bold. I would take the location out of it to a degree. I do agree with it feels like a rivalry where you're anticipating it and where there's animosity. I think those are the two things I kind of come back to for what's a rivalry, what's not a rivalry. Some of the reasons that cause a rivalry, the location can, the geography just can flat out, but also history on the field can create a rivalry. And those generally are going to be more temporary, but sometimes they become bigger deals. I mean, when you look at, I think my version of rivalry is somewhat defined by, my history of following Georgia football, because it feels like Georgia has a rivalry every other week. Like there's half their schedule's rivals.
Just means more.
It's not about SEC taglines. It's about Alabama doesn't have that. I don't think Auburn has that. I don't think like your ACC schools have that, where Georgia will go into a season and the traditional end of the season. You have Georgia Tech, in-state rival. Yep, they don't like each other. Auburn. Oh, yeah, that's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Florida. They play
cocktail party.
I mean, come on. No, you can't say that on CBS, though. Don't say that. So that's three, like that.
We ain't on CBS. Yeah.
That was your traditional
Alabama,
ending to the season. Hold on.
Yeah.
Tennessee, definitely a rivalry. Clemson has been a historic rival, and now they don't play every year, but that would still fall into it. And for a lot of people, that's still a rivalry. South Carolina, I think, is a newer rivalry, and I would probably put it in that classification. I think it is. So that's 6. Alabama is, to a degree, a rival. I don't really look at them in the same way as I even would South Carolina as a rival. But right now, those are your top 2. So they're battling it out every year, and you've got a bunch of recent history with that. That's a lot. And they're all different. And they all are different levels of rivalry. And if you ask 5 Georgia fans, you'll probably get 3 different answers about what's the biggest rival. So,
and you mentioned 7 games out of a possible 13, I think.
Yeah, that's for me, like, there's different flavors of rivalries, but I don't think it's a bad thing to say that all of those are rivals. I don't think it is diminishing to anything. It's not manufactured or anything. It's just those are games that do have a little bit extra to it. And it's good to have those. And I think when it's manufactured and when it's not, because it doesn't last if it's just manufactured. If it's legit, and Atlanta, Orlando, to me, feels legit. I think this Open Cup semifinal is going to kick it up a notch.
Do you think the place will be sold out?
That's a big wonder I have, because Orlando, I think, has struggled to embrace the Open Cup, although they should now because it's a semifinal. I do wonder, though, with Orlando hosting the MLS All-Star game, if you're going to get just a little bit of fatigue of just soccer. And is this one going to get kind of lost in the shuffle of all of it? It shouldn't. I fear that it does. I think it'll be a very good crowd. I think it'll be a very intense crowd because I think it'll be the hardcores who are in on this. And that's what generally happens in Open Cup is you get the people who do follow the team day in and day out and know what this tournament means, what this trophy means, what is really at stake. I think you'll get that. I hope you get some crossover, and I hope you get just a big, loud, rowdy crowd. I'm still surprised at the way they were able to block non-Florida billing addresses from buying tickets. That's a move. That's a bold move.
But never underestimate the Atlanta United fan.
Oh well, yeah, no, that's you're not going to keep Atlanta United fans out because you have to give some tickets up, and other Atlanta fans are very creative. So it will be a fun night, and I think it will be another fun chapter in the Atlanta-Orlando rivalry, and I think it might have a little bit different feeling at the end of it just because it's a knockout game. First time that's happened.
Yeah, I was in a discussion recently with somebody trying to tell them about how we have been trying to continue to tell folks about the importance of Open Cup and what it means, and it's not just something that clogs up your schedule. And so I'm hoping that this run with Atlanta United fans in the geographic footprint that we're talking about first and foremost, but then for the 4 teams that are here, I hope that it can be a boost for all of these markets that have made deep runs and have been able to grab onto a part of Open Cup this year so more folks can understand how big a deal this is and what can happen because of it.
I hope so. I hope it continues to grow. It's going to take games like this to grow it.
And the animosity of said matches too, blocking out people for tickets, all of the lore and all of the stuff that is absolutely attached to it. John Roper, right now last in the queue when it comes to our Tuesday thoughts. He says the best breakfast food is Martin's.
You are not the first person to say that, John Roper. Jarrett Smith is nodding in agreement wherever he is listening to this and whenever he is listening to this. I wish I had one closer to me. I did used to go to a Martin's for breakfast often. One summer where I worked, there was one nearby. It's a place to eat breakfast. What's there to explain? We've had this conversation like every 3 months on the show, John.
About Martin's?
Yes. You don't remember this?
What is it? Is this the Cobb County delicacy?
No, it's not a Cobb County delicacy. It's just not a very big chain.
Okay.
I did not have it in Cobb County. I've never eaten it at Cobb County.
Okay. Well, I thought it was up in Cobb County. I thought that was the one restaurant in Cobb
County. Yes. But no, I've had this every time it comes up. I used to go to one in Morrow. I worked near there when I was in high school, and it was great. I don't think they even are open past lunch. It's just there's not one close to me, so I don't go on a regular basis. But, yeah, it was really good. It's been a long time since I've had Martin's. It was really good. Jarrett's probably throwing things and breaking things at this moment because you're not remembering Martin's.
Wouldn't be the first time I've forgotten something.
It's seriously.
Ricky Ricardo has kind of thrown us into news and notes and nugs here toward the end of the show.
Because ATL UTD fan number 1 threw one at me because he tagged me in at the end of a rant from Joe about the narrative with Atlanta United and how they're treated nationally and all these things. I did not see this until Joe pointed it out. I'm going to read the takeaway from Warshaw's piece about DC United. And I don't 100% disagree with this either, but I'm going to read it. After, just let me refresh. On Atlanta, it's fair and accurate to call Atlanta slow and dull this year. It's not about the idea of possession. That's paraphrasing. Back to it. We see it from the best teams around the world. They are both methodical about possession and exhilarating. Atlanta United, though, have not been utilizing those moments. They set themselves up, set the defense up, and then they go set the same moment up elsewhere on the field. They seem to run out of ideas. They don't know what to do. When they get to those moments, it's okay to be frustrated by the five stripes. Just don't take it out on the possession philosophy. Flip side of the matchup from Sunday, DC United. DC did just about everything right except score their 2 breakaways. They were smart about how they approached the game, extremely compact, sans Wayne Rooney, and committed to the cause. They flipped 2 turnovers into Paul Areola, Lucas Rodriguez breakaways. If DC score one of those, they might be walking out of the Benz with a win. But they didn't, and they still have only 2 wins in the last 11 matches. I wonder if they are now looking down in the standings, only 5 points to the playoff line, more than up. I don't disagree. I mean, they did play really well. They came in with an idea. They did it. They implemented the game plan really well. They executed it really well. They nearly caught Atlanta on breakaways. However, there is always a celebration when it comes to these moments of the opponent who comes in to not play at Mercedes-Benz Stadium because they execute well. Because, look, 100%, this is how I feel about the game. It is far easier to create a game plan to be destructive. It is far easier to build a team to defend. It is far easier to build a team to destroy what the other team wants to do. It is far easier to create a game plan that is based off being reactive. It is far easier to create a game plan to come into a building and take away what the other team does well. That's easier. Doesn't mean you always execute it 100%. Doesn't mean every team can execute it. Doesn't mean every manager can transmit that game plan to his team or to her team. But it is an easier approach to do that than to do what Atlanta United is doing. It is more difficult to say, we're going to dictate the play. It's more difficult to say, we're going to do this with the ball. We want the ball, and we have faith in our players to make the right decisions with the ball. We are going to play an extremely high line. We are going to play with 10 players in your half. We are going to suffocate you with the ball. We are going to use all of that to wear you down and create chances, and we have faith in putting them away. We have faith in being better at what we do. That is the harder road, but that is the more rewarding road, in my opinion, because that is the road where you control your outcome. That is the road that you take ownership of what you are going to do on the day. It's more difficult. It's easier to play off of the opponent, in my mind. It's harder to dictate the game. And I love that Atlanta United has decided from day one to do that and embrace that. Tata Martino and Frank de Boer have done that in some different ways of dictating the game. Not as different as you think, but different. But it is still about being in control of the match, not going into somebody's building or not at home being destructive, being reactive, being defensive, and waiting for the opponent to give you something to get anything out of the game. I like that this team is bold, and I like that this team is trying to do it themselves rather than play off of the opponent. And by the way, I wanted to touch on something since we've been getting into all this about. Let me get the right phrasing again. Hold on. About they seem to run out of ideas. They don't know what to do when they get to these moments. They're not building towards anything. Last year, through the whole season, Atlanta United 11th in the league in open play goals. 11th. This is according to Who Scored, which takes the stats from Opta. 38 goals in open play, according to Who Scored. 11th. 7 counterattack goals. That was number 2. 10 goals from set pieces. That was number 6 in the league. 12 goals from the spot. That was first in the league by double. Number 2 was 6 in the league. 3 own goals. That was also first in the league. That's last year's numbers and rankings. This year, right now, open play goals. Atlanta scored 23. That puts them 8th. They were 11th in open play goals last year, 8th this year, right now. 4 counterattack goals this year, according to who scored. That's tied for first. 5 goals from penalties. That's tied for first. 0 own goals. And they've only got 3 goals from set pieces. That's 19th. 8th in the league right now in open play goals. They were 11th through last season in open play goals. They're not building towards anything, and they run out of ideas.
Yes. I'll have to remember that. Most definitely. You want to wrap up on the Twitters and news notes and nugs?
Yes. I believe Ricky Ricardo had something to add to this.
Correct.
Okay.
One of our news notes and nugs had to do with the Open Cup. And apparently, according to the Cup.us, the first round tentatively scheduled for mid-March to early April of 2020. This is directly from the Open Cup qualifying handbook that was released today, and there are some other things that are being discussed when we were discussing Open Cup. Yes?
Yeah, it's a little weird. I have not seen said handbook just yet, so I want to see how they do this. But qualifying for the amateurs will start in the fall. That's normal. But the first round of the 2020 U.S. Open Cup is tentatively scheduled for mid-March to early April. That's from the Open Cup qualifying handbook that was released yesterday. This is from the Cup.us. That would take USL League 2 and a lot of NPSL teams out of it because they rely on college players. They don't get those players till the first week in May. I mean, most times your Open Cup match is your first game with those college players, and for a lot of those teams, it's their first game period. Now, you do get some NPSL teams that go year-round and maybe have kind of 2 teams in some ways. You also get NPSL regions out west especially that start early because they're not as reliant on college players. So, I mean, they could do it. I did notice that the Cup.us tagged NPSL and UPSL and some of the other regional leagues in that note about you have to apply for qualifying. You need to get your applications in now, because if that's the idea, if the first round of the tournament's going to be mid-March to early April, I'm assuming they're changing qualification for summer leagues, and maybe they're not getting into the tournament because they're a summer league. And if NPSL teams want to qualify, they would have to do it through regional qualification like they used to have to do. This is going back to like 2007, 8, 9. I'm intrigued because that would be a big change. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, is it a massive change to the tournament at the stage we're at now? No, because USL League 2, former PDL, and NPSL teams generally don't get past the round of 32, the round of 16, because it's tough. This would eliminate them from it. This would kind of take the tournament to a amateur qualifying stage and then the professional teams coming in earlier. I want to see the full schedule and see how it plays out, because this would be a big change. I think it would be a big change in the early rounds. I think it'd be a big change for the tenor of the tournament. I don't think it would change who wins it and the competitiveness of it in the grand scheme of things. But it would make it a different process altogether.
Let's see. We've got Leagues Cup tonight. Couple of matches.
A couple other things real quick I wanted to touch on. Paul Arriola is reportedly in demand from Liga MX and some European clubs, according to CBS Sports' Roger Gonzalez. He played for Tijuana before he came to D.C. He would be considered a domestic player in Liga MX, so that would really help him with those clubs. I'm intrigued by the European clubs and potentially Premier League clubs that would be interested in Areola. That complicates things with the Luciano Acosta news that now there's an offer on the table from a Saudi club for him. And he's out of contract at the end of the year, so his situation's complicated to begin with because he could sign a pre-contract, walk on a free at the end of the year. DC gets nothing. The Saudi club is offering a pretty large transfer fee, according to Pablo Maurer at The Athletic, but I don't know if he wants to go to that club. So DC's got a lot of stuff to figure out off the field. LAFC might have some stuff to deal with off the field as well. Vincent Tan, who is one of the minority owners of LAFC in the conglomeration of ownership, it's reported in the Star in Malaysia that he might sell 20% of the club. And according to sources, it would be he'd do this because he wants to concentrate his financial resources on his club in Belgium, and probably most importantly, to get Cardiff City back to the Premier League. And that's a tall order. Well, they're saying his sale could net him around $100 million or more. That'd give him a lot of coin to play with Cardiff City.
Yeah, and in the championship, that would definitely give him some chips to play with, because one of the things with Cardiff City in the Prem, one of the things that Neil Warnock would talk about in the press was just the idea that they weren't investing. And then you had the Salah tragedy that happened with Cardiff when they were about to drop all of the money and bring in a quality player. And that was the first time that Cardiff and Vincent Tan were going to invest that kind of money. And that is still, I think that transfer fee is still being debated back and forth between Cardiff and Salah's old club. So you've still got that money hanging out there. So anything that Tan can do to try to get Cardiff City, that's on a championship level. If you want to bring in 9 figures, that'll help you out and bringing folks in to get you back to the Prem.
Yeah, that'll be a big deal.
In theory.
Columbus Crew, they train in a town called Obetz. That's where their training facility is. And Obetz is playing hardball with the Crew. This is ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yes,
it is. Just absolutely ridiculous. The city of Obetz is refusing to renew the Crew's lease on their training facility. They're on a month-to-month right now. Again, a lot of this had to do with the Crew nearly going away, so they didn't sign a new lease. So this is where they get caught. They're on a month-to-month, and Obetz will renew the lease if the Haslams bring some element of a Cleveland Browns training camp there.
Whatever.
Yeah, so the Crew are kind of in a bad spot with this because they could be out of there at the end of the season, and then where do you train? And they've got to do some things to have that facility at Montfray at the fairgrounds that they want to do ultimately for training. It's not ready yet, so what are they going to do? There's a lot of questions, but I think this is a really poor form from Obetz.
This is a hideous attempt at a power play.
Yeah, it is. In a situation that they know it's not going to pay off. So the Crew might get caught in it, though, and they're going to have to figure out what to do about training. You mentioned Leagues Cup. 2 matches tonight. Chicago Cruz Azul on ESPN Plus at 8:30. LA Galaxy and Xolos on ESPN at 11 p.m. out west. These games do not go to extra time. It would go straight to penalties if it's level at the end of regulation.
Is this a rivalry?
No. Which one?
LA and Xolos. Los Angeles and Tijuana.
No, they haven't met. Have they even met in CONCACAF Champions League before? Have they met in official competition before? I don't think so. It could be. I mean, you talk about stuff like that Houston and Pachuca had a temporary rivalry in CONCACAF Champions League, and whenever those two teams do face off, it is brought back to the forefront because they had a run where they met in, I believe it was the Champions Cup. It was right before it turned into the Champions League format, and I think they then met again in the Champions League the next year and maybe met in the Superliga as well. They played against each other a lot in a short period of time with a lot at stake. So there was a bit of a rivalry and really good matches, too. This was when the Dynamo were winning MLS Cup on a regular basis. Those were fun. and those will be called back because of that history. I don't think the Galaxy and Tijuana have met in official competition.
And Guillermo Barros Escalota has already said that he is not going to play Zlatan or Jonah Dos Santos because they play in Portland on Saturday.
Yeah, that's the challenges. Mike Petke said that his organization has made it clear that this is a big deal to them. They play Tigres tomorrow night at 10:30 on ESPN+. Dynamo play Club America at 8:30 on ESPN+ tomorrow. I'm okay with the idea of this. I think it'll be better once it actually gets to a qualification process like they're going towards, and it is basically the Europa League for MLS teams. That's cool. I'm okay with it. You do have to figure out the schedule because when you've got Escaloto saying what he's saying, I believe Wilmer Cabrera has said roughly the same thing when it comes to the Dynamo. Look, and if 3 of the games are on ESPN Plus in the first round of it, I think that tells you how important this is. It's not as important as it can be. Yeah. And it's not as important as hopefully it will be. But right now, it's not that important.
Tijuana prevailed on aggregate after each won home legs in a CCL quarterfinal 5 years ago, and they've played 3 times in MLS's preseason between 2011 and 2016.
Yeah, preseason doesn't matter. That would be the one time, and it was 5 years ago, and I don't remember anything about it. So, no, not a rivalry yet.
Thought I would ask. And apparently Gordon Wild is working out with DC United.
Oh, okay. They need some depth, and they might need some bodies if Paul Arriola and Luciano Acosta get sold. So, Yeah,
the heads up from both Nick and Jared and Stephen Goff about that one.
Lots of heads ups on that. Thanks, everybody.
And Nick is also saying that Martins is the damn deal. That's a direct quote.
I told you, we've had this conversation before. It's not news.
Well, then I just need to sample Martins so I can work my opinions forward and come out of the dark ages when it comes to breakfast.
Well, more importantly, you need to remember that we've discussed it before.
We've discussed it before?
Yes. Many times.
Just thought I would ask.
Jason Heinley's with you, though. He said he didn't remember it either. It is back in the Jarrett days because Jarrett was a big proponent of Martins. So it feels like forever ago that Jarrett was on the show in the mornings, but we did have this conversation at least a couple of times. I might be exaggerating for effect a little bit, but I know it's come up multiple times.
Yes, John P. Before we go, last year they loved Atlanta United. This is the national narrative. Last year they loved us because Don was using us as an example to up the ante for expansion teams. This year it's all about reinvigorating the West Coast. So MLS and Pro are in love with Bradley and Vela, and we're a distraction to this year's marketing strategy.
See, I disagree, John, because I think this was going on last year too. Like, Ezequiel Barco was a below-average MLS winger last year.
Oh, yeah.
So, and for whatever you want to say about, yes, Barco's been much better this year, even though it feels like forever since we've seen him. Yes, he's been much better this year. But to call him a below-average MLS winger and then to keep arguing that he just wasn't any good last year, no. The numbers don't back that up. They just don't. Was he $15 million good last year? No, he wasn't. He wasn't. But to say that he was a below-average winger, that's just one of many different things that was said last year. I think this year it's been even more exaggerated. And look, I really do think a lot of it has to do with previous perceptions of Frank de Boer. I do. And I think that's very unfair. And it's unfair to him as an individual. It's unfair to him as a professional. And it's just not paying attention. Because I don't think this team is boring. There are Atlanta United fans who think that. So, hey, they're not the only ones. I don't think that's the case. And I think that it's an attempted, created narrative to go down that road. And a lot of it is because of Frank's previous history. I don't think that's fair because it's leaving out the Ajax portion of his history. And I think it's also not really looking at how this season has played out. So, we'll see. there's a lot of soccer left, and Atlanta United's right in the thick of it at the top of the Eastern Conference, and they get a chance to test themselves against the team that has defined the 2019 season, LAFC. Friday night, we will start getting you ready for that tomorrow, well past Wednesday, so you can give us any questions you want, ask us whatever you want on that match, on anything else related to the game. We'll be here to talk about it at 9 o'clock. And we will get you ready for Atlanta and L.A. Man, this is a big one. It's a big one on Friday. It's going to be the game of the weekend, and it's going to be talked about quite a bit. So we'll start that conversation tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in this morning. We always appreciate you guys listening and spreading the word. So we'll be back with you in the morning. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha butt fumble, y'all.